Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a deep dive into the really captivating world of calisthenics. If you've ever thought about getting, incredibly strong, building real functional fitness, all while basically using just your own body weight, maybe minimal equipment, then this deep dive is definitely for you.
Right.
It's an approach to strength training that, well, it really emphasizes versatility and accessibility.
And that's really key, that accessibility.
Yeah.
Calisthenics isn't just sort of bodyweight exercises in general.
Okay.
It specifically involves multi-joint compound movements. And what's particularly fascinating, I think, and often overlooked, is how naturally adaptive it is. It adapts to your unique physical attributes, things like, say, limb length, where your tendons insert.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's not some one-size-fits-all program. It genuinely molds to your unique body.
Right.
Which makes it incredibly personalized and really effective for a wide range of body structures, different ages too. And because it relies so heavily on closed chain movements, that's where your hands or feet are typically anchored, like in a push-up or squat.
Okay, got it.
It promotes these incredibly functional and efficient movement patterns, stuff that translates directly to daily life.
That point about adapting to limb length, that's really interesting. Can you maybe expand on that a bit? Like, how does that actually work out compared to, I don't know, fixed pack weight machines?
Yeah, sure.
Why does that make calisthenics so uniquely personalized?
It's a great question. So think about a leg press machine, right? It forces your body into one specific path. But with calisthenics, like a squat, your body finds its own most efficient, most natural path based on your proportion.
Ah, okay.
So someone with long thigh bones, their squat might look a bit different from someone with shorter ones.
Right.
But in calisthenics, both people find their optimal depth and form. So you get these truly personalized strength gains that actually respect your individual biomechanics.
That makes sense. Less unnatural stress, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it builds strength that's genuinely practical for your body, how you move.
That makes perfect sense. So, okay, our mission today then is to really unpack this.
Right.
Look at the ancient origins. Uncover the huge range of benefits and explore the practical side too. How you can actually use calisthenics. Showing you why it's not just, a workout, but a really powerful, accessible, and, well, enduring path to fitness.
Absolutely.
So let's start right back at the beginning. The word itself, calisthenics, it has these amazing ancient roots.
You guys, yes.
It comes from ancient Greek. Kalos, meaning beauty,
Right.
and sthenos, meaning strength. So it's literally like the art of using your body weight for resistance, developing muscle.
Beauty and strength together.
Exactly, embodying both. It's not just about brute force. There's an aesthetic element too, a skillful part.
And that connection to ancient practice, it's really deep. We see records, of calisthenics being a cornerstone of physical training back in ancient Greece.
Like who?
Well, the armies of Alexander the Great used it.
Yeah.
And of course, the Spartans.
Ah, the Spartans.
Legendary for their discipline, their physical prowess. They famously used it even at the Battle of Thermopylae. Kept them in fighting shape without fancy gyms.
Incredible, just pure practicality. But what's maybe even more surprising, it wasn't just a Greek thing.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Calisthenics was also practiced way back in ancient China.
Really? How so?
Han Dynasty physicians actually prescribed it, part of their health regimen, alongside specific dietary practices.
Wow.
As a method for just maintaining overall health, preventing illness.
It really shows how these ideas, body movement for well-being, they're kind of timeless, universal.
Definitely. These principles just keep showing up.
That link to holistic health, even way back then, is fascinating. So, okay, bringing this forward. What does this all mean for you listening today? What are the core advantages of doing bodyweight exercises now?
Well, the biggest one, the most obvious, as you kind of touched on, is just convenience. Most calisthenics moves need zero equipment. None at all. Which makes them incredibly versatile.
Yeah, you can do them anywhere.
Literally anywhere. At home, hotel room when you're traveling, out at a park.
And they're free.
Completely free. Or you can get creative, Use common household things. A sturdy table edge for rows, maybe. Or a low wall for dips. A strong tree branch for pull-ups if you find one. It's adaptable.
What's fascinating here, though, is just how broad the benefits are. It's not just about muscle. You mentioned it enhances a whole spectrum of biomotor abilities.
Right.
Can you break that down? What are biomotor abilities, and how does calisthenics hit so many at once?
Yeah, absolutely. So biomotor abilities, it's basically a term for all the fundamental physical capacities we need to move well.
Okay.
Things like strength, power, endurance, speed, flexibility, coordination, and balance. All of those. Yeah. And because calisthenics mostly uses these compound multi-joint movements, it doesn't isolate muscles like, say, a bicep curl machine does. Instead, it forces your whole body to work together as an integrated unit. So it demands strength, coordination, and balance all at the same time in one exercise often.
And that's why you get such wide-ranging improvements.
Exactly. That integrated approach is key. You're training the entire system, not just bits and pieces in isolation.
That integrated approach, that sounds incredibly valuable, especially, as we get older.
Absolutely.
And speaking of that, a really relevant benefit for a lot of people is how powerful it can be for older adults. How does bodyweight training specifically help them?
Oh, it's incredibly beneficial. For older individuals, doing bodyweight exercises can lead to significant gains in muscle mass.
Which is huge for maintaining function.
Huge. And vastly improved mobility. Increased bone density, too.
Yeah.
And beyond the physical stuff.
Yeah.
It's been shown to help reduce symptoms of depression, significantly improve sleep habits.
Wow.
Yeah. And there's a strong belief, a lot of research pointing towards it, that bodyweight training might diminish or even help prevent cognitive decline.
That's significant.
And crucially, it can really mitigate the risk of falls. Big issue for older adults.
How does it do that?
By building functional strength, especially in the legs and core. So exercises like squats, lunges, step-ups, they're highly recommended.
Right.
They directly increase strength and stability, which directly reduces that fall risk.
And you mentioned earlier it's different from machines.
Yes, because unlike weight machines that often isolate muscles or force movement in just one direction, bodyweight exercises give you multi-directional movement. It mimics daily activities much more closely. So the strength you gain is far more applicable to just living your life.
Yeah, that makes complete sense. Training the body as a unit leads to better real-world function. It actually brings to mind, there was a study in 2017 that specifically found calisthenics training was really effective for improving posture, overall strength, and body composition.
Right.
All without needing any major training equipment. It backs up everything you're saying.
It does. The evidence is definitely there.
Okay, so we've covered the fascinating history, the universal benefits. Now, for someone listening who's inspired, they're probably thinking, okay, what does this actually look like? What do I do?
Right, the practical stuff.
What are some of those foundational movements someone could start with? And how do they show that versatility?
Good question. The practical side is where it gets really exciting. Let's take push-ups. Prime example, right?
Classic.
Total cornerstone exercise.
Yeah.
Builds your chest, shoulders, triceps. But its real power is in how you can scale it, the variations.
Scale it how?
Well, if a full push-up on the floor is too hard right now, you can start with wall push-ups. Much easier.
Okay.
Then maybe progress to push-ups on your knees, then eventually work up to a full one.
And if that gets too easy?
Then you make it harder. Elevate your feet on a chair, work towards maybe even a one-arm push-up down the line. It always challenges you.
Right. Always room to grow. What else?
Then you've got squats. Incredibly versatile. Works your quads, hamstrings, calves, glutes, your core.
Pretty much the whole lower body and core.
Exactly. And again, you adapt them. Change the depths, half squats, quarter squats if needed, or go for a full deep squat.
Okay. And what about chin-ups versus pull-ups? People always mix those up.
Yeah. Common confusion. The key difference is just your grip.
How so?
For chin-ups, your palms face you. That tends to emphasize the biceps a bit more.
Okay, chin-ups, palms towards you.
Right. For pull-ups, your palms face away from you. That hits your lats more, those big back muscles.
Got it. Pull-ups, palms away, more back.
Exactly. Both are fantastic for building upper body and back strength. And we shouldn't forget planks.
Planks. Simple but deadly.
Simple but so effective. That static hold. It engages your entire core, teaches your body to stabilize and brace. Really foundational.
That variety, that versatility in the exercises, it lets you tailor calisthenics for different goals, right?
Absolutely.
So if someone wants to build, say, muscle mass versus pure strength or maybe endurance, how do the training methods change?
That's a great point. The exercises might look similar, but how you apply them changes depending on the goal.
Okay, so for muscle mass, hypertrophy.
For hypertrophy, yeah, building muscle size, you'd focus on increasing your load volume over time.
Load volume meaning?
More reps, more sets, maybe playing with shorter rest periods between sets sometimes, gradually doing more work.
Okay. And for pure strength?
For pure strength, you focus on increasing the intensity of the exercise.
Making it harder.
Exactly. Moving towards more difficult variations or skills. things that challenge your muscles to produce maximum force, even if for fewer reps.
Right, like going from a regular push-up towards a one-arm push-up.
Precisely. And then for endurance?
More reps, less rest.
Yeah, typically you'd shorten your rest periods between sets, or maybe perform longer sets without stopping, or circuits, keep the heart rate up.
Gotcha.
And beyond those main goals, calisthenics also gives you those extra benefits, like increasing bone density.
From the weight-bearing nature.
Yeah, loading your bones.
They...
And significantly enhancing core control, which honestly is fundamental for almost any physical activity.
Makes sense. Okay, so moving beyond those kind of foundational individual moves, there's this intriguing idea called cooperative calisthenics.
Yes.
Where two or more people actually help each other out. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a pretty unique aspect, and it really plays into that minimal equipment idea.
How so?
Well, it involves one person doing an exercise while another person adds resistance.
Like physically?
Yeah. Imagine someone doing squats, but with another person sitting on their back.
Whoa, okay. That's direct resistance.
Exactly. That's cooperative calisthenics providing an external load. Or maybe someone's doing a push-up and their partner gently pushes down on their back, adds resistance.
Does it always involve direct contact?
Not necessarily. Equipment is optional. You could say, use a rope that two people pull in opposite directions.
Ah, like a tug-of-war variation?
Sort of, yeah. One person provides less resistance, acting as the weight for the other. Or you just use body weight assistance or resistance.
What's the big advantage there?
The huge advantage is you can get very high levels of resistance with minimal or even zero traditional gym gear.
Right, you don't need a huge weight rack.
Exactly. The challenge, though, it can be hard to accurately measure the exact resistance your partner is providing. It's not like adding a 10-pound plate.
True, less precise. But it sounds like a fun way to train with someone.
Definitely adds variety and intensity.
And then shifting back to individual stuff, there are the really advanced skills, the ones that kind of blow your mind.
Oh, yeah.
Here's where it gets really interesting, right? What are some of those feats that show the peak of calisthenics training?
These are the skills you often see, blowing up on social media or in calisthenics parks. Super impressive stuff.
Like what?
Okay, take the L-sit. Seems simple, but holding your body in that perfect L shape, legs straight out, suspended just by your arms, requires incredible core strength, serious hamstring flexibility. It's a real test of foundational strength and control.
Okay, L-sit. What else?
Then you got muscle-ups.
Ah, the muscle-up. Heard of that.
Fantastic combination move. It's a pull-up, flowing immediately into a dip, all in one fluid movement over the bar.
Smooth transition.
Needs explosive power and that seamless transition, really dynamic. And then, well, then there's the planche.
The planche. That sounds intense.
It is. It's one of the most advanced skills out there. Often takes years, literally years, of dedicated training.
What does it look like?
You hold your entire body parallel to the ground, horizontal.
Yeah.
Supported only by your hands.
Wow. Just hands.
Just hands. Requires an insane amount of strength, balance, body tension. It's an amazing demonstration of just pure control.
Incredible. It's amazing to see how this ancient, really adaptive training has evolved into what's now this rapidly growing international sport, street workout, right?
Indeed. Street workout. It's blown up.
Yeah.
You have athletes performing these intricate calisthenics routines, usually in timed sessions.
For judges.
Yeah, for a panel of judges, often in outdoor parks, hence the street part. And there are organizations now.
Like governing bodies?
Exactly. Like the World Street Workout and Calisthenics Federation, the WSWCF, or the World Calisthenics Organization, WCO. They have their Battle of the Bars competitions.
Battle of the Bars. Cool name.
Yeah. And they've created this truly global competitive scene. Formal rules, weight classes, specific judging criteria.
So it's serious competition.
Oh, definitely. It provides a structured way for athletes all over the world to showcase incredible strength, skill, artistry. It's amazing to watch.
And within that, there's also freestyle calisthenics.
Right. That's a style where athletes use more power and momentum.
How so?
For dynamic skills, acrobatic tricks on the bar, often linking them together in this continuous flow.
Wow. Sounds like gymnastics almost.
It has elements.
Yeah.
Yeah. It demands incredible body control, a really deep understanding of physics, body mechanics, how to generate and absorb force.
And this whole modern resurgence, it's pretty accessible to regular people too, right? Through calisthenics parks.
Totally. That's a huge part of it. These outdoor fitness areas, specifically designed for bodyweight training.
What do they usually have?
Often free to the public, equipped with the essentials. Pull-up bars, monkey bars, parallel bars for dips.
Stuff you need for the basics and more.
Exactly. And the community aspect there is really strong. People often train together, share tips, motivate each other. It's a great environment.
Can you find these parks easily?
Yeah, surprisingly easily sometimes. There are even online maps available now, websites dedicated to helping you find calisthenics parks around the world.
That's cool. It makes it easy to find a spot.
Definitely lowers the barrier to entry.
Okay, so as we wrap up, here's maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to consider. How these timeless principles of calisthenics, rooted in ancient practices focused on just the body's natural capabilities, how they continue to evolve into such diverse forms of fitness and sport today.
It's quite a journey.
Yeah, from ancient battlefields to modern street workout competitions. It just offers these accessible, effective ways to build strength, balance, well-being.
In pretty much any environment.
Exactly. So maybe as you go about your day-to-day, you might even start noticing how often you're already doing bodyweight movements without even thinking about it.
Squatting down to pick something up, pushing open a heavy door.
Right. It's all connected. Something to think about.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We're the podcast where we take your sources and really pull them apart to find the good stuff. Today, we are tackling a huge figure. I mean, someone right at the absolute center of history, of belief, Jesus. Our source is, well, it's a big one. The Wikipedia article simply titled Jesus, and it's packed.
Yeah.
Everything from historical takes to art.
Yeah.
It's basically a shortcut to getting up to speed on this incredibly influential person.
It really is. And our job today is to sort of navigate through all that density. We want to pull out the key facts, some fascinating details, and just show the range of perspectives on Jesus. We'll look at what scholars generally agree on, what the New Testament says, how different faiths see him, without, pushing any one view. We're just reporting what's in the source. And it really says something that one Wikipedia page covers his life, teachings, relics, even views in Hinduism. Shows his impact, right?
Okay, so let's unpack it. The source kicks off identifying Jesus as a first-century Jewish preacher, religious leader, central figure of Christianity, obviously, world's largest religion. But this bit jumped out at me immediately. Virtually all modern scholars of antiquity agree that Jesus existed historically. That feels foundational, like a really powerful starting point.
It absolutely is. And it's crucial to understand why they agree. It's not about faith. It's about historical methodology, looking at various ancient sources, even non-Christian ones sometimes. There's enough corroborating evidence for historians to say, yes, this person was real. And what's also interesting is how he was understood. Early on, his followers called him the Christ.
Right, meaning the Messiah from the Hebrew Bible.
Exactly, anointed one. But over time, Christ just sort of fused with his name, didn't it? Became Jesus Christ. And the term Christian, follower of Christ, that's been around since the 1st century too.
Okay, so moving to the New Testament, where most people get their picture of Jesus, the source highlights the main ones, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the canonical Gospels. But it also mentions other early groups had their own descriptions, like the Gospel of Thomas or Judas. But it says scholars think those are less reliable, written way later.
Yeah, and that gets to a really important point. How reliable are even the canonical Gospels for history? Since the Enlightenment, really, academics have sort of questioned their historical accuracy. They draw a distinction between the Jesus in the Gospels and the Jesus of history. And it's key to remember the authors aren't named in the texts themselves. They're pseudonymous.
Pseudonymous, meaning?
Meaning the names Matthew, Mark, Luke, John were attributed later by tradition. Tradition links them to, say, John Mark, who knew Peter, or a disciple for Matthew, Paul's companion for Luke, the beloved disciple for John. But it's not like they signed their names at the end. So they're not quite direct eyewitness reports in that simple sense.
Okay, so let's trace the story within those Gospels. Nazareth is his childhood home. The source points out Joseph is there early on, but then just disappears from the narrative. No mention later. And Jesus had brothers James, Joses, Judas, Simon, and sisters, though they're unnamed. But here's something I found really striking from Mark's Gospel. Early in his ministry, he clashes with his own family, his mother, his brothers. They actually try and restrain him. They say he is mentally ill. That's quite something to include.
It really is. And that detail about the family thinking he was mentally ill, that's often brought up by scholars using what they call the criterion of embarrassment.
Criterion of embarrassment.
Yeah, the basic idea is Would early Christians invent a story that made Jesus or his family look bad or that was potentially embarrassing? Probably not. So if it's in there, it's more likely to reflect some kind of historical reality. It adds a layer of authenticity, perhaps. Another thing widely accepted historically, using similar logic, is his baptism by John the Baptist.
Why that embarrassing?
Well, baptism was often associated with repentance for sins. So having Jesus baptized by John could imply Jesus needed to repent, or that John was somehow superior. Early Christians probably wouldn't make that up. Though the Gospels, of course, frame it differently, with the Holy Spirit descending like a dove, the voice from heaven.
Right, declaring him God's son. Okay. So after baptism, he starts his public ministry. Matthew, Mark, and Luke, synoptics, they mostly show him in Galilee, right, where he's pretty successful initially. Then later he goes to Jerusalem, and that's where things turn. He's rejected, killed. He's called rabbi often. And he tells people not to say he's the Messiah, the messianic secret.
Yes, the messianic secret, mainly in Mark's gospel. It's debated why maybe managing expectations, avoiding Roman attention, a theological point. It's complex. But if you contrast that with John's gospel, it's quite different. John has Jesus ministering much more in and around Jerusalem right from the start, and his divine identity, it's openly stated very early on. No real secrecy there.
Interesting. And miracles. They feature heavily.
Oh, absolutely. Healings, exorcisms, controlling nature. John calls them signs, explicitly meant to prove who Jesus is, his divinity. In the Synoptics, though, sometimes Jesus actually refuses to do a miracle when people demand proof. But a key thing across all of them, he does these miracles freely, never asks for payment, and they often come with a teaching linking the act to faith. Faith is always central.
Okay, then there's this big moment in the Synoptics, Peter's confession. Peter says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And right after that, Jesus starts talking about his own death and resurrection. Then boom, the transfiguration. His face shines like the sun, clothes dazzling white, and that voice from heaven again, "This is my son, listen to him." But the author's notes neither Peter's confession nor the transfiguration are in John's gospel. Why leave those out?
Well, again, it likely points to John's different approach. In the Synoptics, these are huge turning points. Peter finally gets it. Jesus' divine glory is momentarily revealed. But John, he's been showing Jesus' divinity all along through the signs and Jesus' own speeches, those long I am statements. So from John's perspective, maybe those specific synoptic moments weren't needed in the same way to make his theological point. His whole gospel is a kind of transfiguration narrative in a sense.
Right, I see. Okay, let's move towards the end. The final week, Passion Week. It takes up, what, like a third of the Gospels? That's a lot of focus. Starts with the triumphal entry into Jerusalem, Palm Sunday. Riding back donkey.
Yes, riding a young donkey. Very deliberate symbolism there. It echoes a prophecy from Zechariah about a humble king coming to Jerusalem, and the crowds laying down cloaks, palm branches, singing from the Psalms. It's presented as a royal, messianic welcome.
And then the temple incident. That seems like a major confrontation.
Definitely. The cleansing of the Second Temple, Jesus driving out money changers, merchants, accusing them of making his father's house a den of thieves. A direct challenge to the temple authorities. But remember, as we said, John puts this event way earlier, right at the start of his ministry.
Ah, yes, that chronological difference again, highlighting different aspects. And this week is also when Judas decides to betray him, one of the 12, for 30 silver coins.
A detail included in the Synoptics and alluded to in John. It sets the stage for the arrest.
Then the Last Supper, the final meal with the apostles. He predicts the betrayal Matthew and John actually named Judas. And this is where he institutes the Eucharist, right? The bread and wine as his body and blood.
Correct. A foundational moment for Christian ritual and theology. He also predicts Peter's denial 3 times before the rooster crows. And only John's gospel has that scene of Jesus washing the disciples' feet after the meal. Another act emphasizing humility and service.
Such a dense, dramatic week.
It culminates, as you'd expect, in his arrest. Trials before Jewish leaders, then the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. Pilate's governorship, AD 26 to 36, helps anchor the timeline. And then the crucifixion, which, like his existence, is considered a historical fact by most scholars.
And the resurrection. How do the Gospels handle that?
Interestingly, none of them describe the actual moment of resurrection. Instead, they focus on the discovery of the empty tomb and then various appearances of the risen Jesus to his followers. But the source points out these appearance accounts have distinct differences.
Differences, like contradictions.
Well, variations in who saw him first, where, what was said. Some scholars suggest this might reflect, maybe competition among early groups, or just different emphases by the authors. And then 40 days later, according to Luke and Acts, he ascends into heaven.
Okay, that covers the main Christian narrative, but what about other perspectives? This was another aha section for me. Judaism's view is very clear. Jesus was not God and not the Messiah.
Exactly. Their reasoning is quite specific. They argue he didn't fulfill key messianic prophecies found in the Hebrew Bible. Things like rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem, gathering all the Jewish people back to Israel, ushering in an era of world peace. These didn't happen. Plus, Jewish tradition holds that prophecy ceased after Malachi, centuries before Jesus. And yeah, the source mentions things like the Toledat Yeshu, medieval texts that were quite polemical, portraying Jesus negatively.
A completely different lens. What about other groups?
Well, Manichaeism, an ancient religion that blended various traditions, saw Jesus as a major prophet, put him alongside Zoroaster, Buddha, and their own founder, Manichak. Islam also holds Jesus Isa in very high regard.
As a prophet, right, but not divine.
Precisely. Muslims believe he was a prophet of God, born miraculously to the Virgin Mary, performed miracles by God's permission, but they firmly reject his divinity and the idea of God having a son. And crucially, Islamic belief is that he wasn't actually crucified. God saved him and raised him to heaven bodily. Someone else was made to look like him.
Wow, that's a significant divergence.
Yeah.
And it keeps going. Some Hindus see him as an avatar, like a divine manifestation, or a sadhu, a holy man.
And some Buddhists, even the Dalai Lama, have viewed him as a bodhisattva, someone on the path to enlightenment who helps others.
Then there's the New Age movement, calling him Master Jesus, a spiritual teacher.
Right, or Theosophy, which had ideas about the Christ consciousness inhabiting the man Jesus. Even among atheists, the views vary wildly from questioning his sanity to praising his moral teachings, like Richard Dawkins has done.
It's incredible. The same figure sparking such a vast, diverse range of interpretations across cultures and belief systems.
It really speaks to his enduring influence, doesn't it?
Definitely. Okay, last section. Art and relics. Tangible things. Earliest images are late 2nd, early 3rd century. Catacombs, Dura Europos.
Yes, some very early Christian art survived.
But depicting Christ was controversial early on. There was a synod, Elvira, AD 306. They said no pictures in churches to avoid worshiping them.
That's right. There was a strong concern about idolatry, drawing from their Jewish roots. That early tension helps explain why different artistic traditions developed later. The Eastern Church leaned towards flat, stylized icons from the 5th century onwards. The Transfiguration was a big theme. While in the West, especially during the Renaissance, artists focused on more naturalistic depictions. And the crucifix, the cross with Jesus' body on it, became really central in Western, particularly Roman Catholic churches, by about the 13th century.
So visual representations evolved. What about actual physical objects, relics?
Relics. Well, the source is pretty blunt here. Because Jerusalem was destroyed in AD 70, very little, if anything, survives directly from that earliest period. And the source states quite clearly, not a single reliably authenticated relic of Jesus exists.
Not one, despite all the claims. Wood from the cross, nails.
Nope. The source mentions Erasmus, the Renaissance scholar, joking there was enough true cross wood floating around to build entire ships or many buildings, and over 30 holy nails were venerated across Europe at one point. Authenticity is just highly questionable for all these.
What about the Shroud of Turin? That's probably the most famous one.
It is the best known, yes. It's been studied intensely, carbon dated, though the dating is debated, visited by millions, even popes. But its authenticity as the actual burial cloth of Jesus, still very much debated among scientists and historians. The source doesn't give it a pass either.
Okay, so, wow, we've covered a lot of ground. From near universal scholarly agreement he existed, to the huge debates about his life story in the Gospels, his teachings, the miracles, and then this incredible spectrum of views, Jewish, Islamic, Hindu, Buddhist, even atheist, plus the art, the icons, the crucifixes, and the lack of verifiable relics. It's a lot to hold together.
It really is. It shows how one figure can generate this immense, complex, sometimes contradictory web of history, theology, culture, and interpretation. Which leads to, I think, a really interesting thought to leave you with. If the historians mostly agree he lived, but the details of his life in the primary sources are debated, and the religious and cultural takes vary so enormously, what does being well-informed about Jesus actually mean for you? How do you balance the historical kernel, the conflicting narratives, the diverse theological claims, and the undeniable cultural impact into something coherent? How do we hold all these different kinds of truth at once?
Welcome to The Deep Dive, where we plunge into the heart of fascinating subjects to extract the most important insights for you. Today, we're diving into a real literary titan, John Milton's Paradise Lost. This isn't just, any poem. It's a monumental work that completely reshaped epic poetry. Just a sprawling, ambitious vision that's captivated readers for centuries. Our mission today is to sift through, a whole stack of extensive sources, including some really insightful Wikipedia excerpts, to pull out those surprising facts and profound insights that make you truly well-informed. And here's something truly astonishing to start with. Milton composed this entire, colossal epic while completely blind.
Yeah.
Dictating it to friends and assistants. It's just an incredible testament to his genius and sheer resilience.
It truly is. And what's remarkable right from the outset is that Milton himself explicitly stated the overarching purpose of this work.
Right.
To justify the ways of God to men. This single line, it immediately signals the incredibly profound philosophical and theological questions the poem grapples with. We're talking fundamental concepts like free will versus predestination, the very nature of good and evil, and how those play out on a cosmic scale. It sets the stage for an intellectual journey as much as a narrative one, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
So, okay, to really unpack this, what defines Paradise Lost as an epic poem? You mentioned its ambition. Can you help us understand its core structure and what makes it such a foundational work?
Well, at its core, Paradise Lost is indeed an epic poem written predominantly in blank verse. It was first published 1667 with 10 books.
10 books first.
Right. But Milton later expanded it to 12 in 1674, consciously mirroring Virgil's Aeneid.
Ah, okay.
Its core subject is the biblical story of the fall of humankind. The temptation of Adam and Eve by the fallen angel Satan and their subsequent expulsion from the Garden of Eden. But Milton's genius, really, was in how he approached the epic form.
How so? What made his approach, innovative?
Well, instead of invoking classical muses like Homer or Virgil did, Milton consciously chose to invoke the heavenly muse. That's a direct address to the Christian God for inspiration.
Interesting.
And he repurposed many classical epic conventions, like the in medias res opening.
Starting in the middle of things.
Exactly, starting in the midst of things, as well as journeys to the underworld, large-scale battles, and the use of Homeric similes. But here's where it gets really innovative. He fundamentally twisted these elements. Instead of celebrating classical heroism, which often centered on, say, military strength, cunning, or traits like wrath, you see that in figures like Achilles or Odysseus.
Yeah, the warrior types.
Right. Milton aimed to promote Christian virtues, love, mercy, humility, self-sacrifice, embodied most profoundly, of course, by the Son of God.
And he did all this in blank verse, unrhymed iambic pentameter. Milton truly became known for mastering this style, right? Using its flexibility for incredible syntactic complexity. It hadn't been widely used in non-dramatic poetry until Paradise Lost had it. Expert, how did his groundbreaking use of this form reshape epic poetry? What made his approach so distinctive for centuries?
That's a fantastic question because Milton truly became the master of blank verse. He leveraged its flexibility to achieve incredible syntactic complexity. Before Paradise Lost, it wasn't widely used in non-dramatic poetry, but after his work, it basically became the standard for English epics for centuries. Though, as you might imagine, not everyone loved its imitators. Samuel Johnson, for instance, famously mocked those who tried to copy Milton's unique style without his genius.
Right, it takes a certain skill.
Yeah.
And speaking of Milton's incredible control over language, his mastery went far beyond just the blank verse, didn't it? I've heard he even wove, hidden messages into the text.
Oh, he absolutely did. Did you know he even wove hidden messages, like acrostics, directly into the text?
Really? Like what?
Well, for instance, in Book 9, there's a verse describing the serpent that tempted Eve, and it literally spells out Satan if you read the first letter of each line downwards.
Oh, way.
Yeah. And elsewhere in the same book, you can find F-A-all and then fall.
Wow.
This isn't just, a clever trick. It's a chilling, almost subliminal way Milton reinforces the idea that the shadow of the fall and Satan's influence is woven into the very fabric of existence, even down to the letters on the page. It's a testament to his intricate, almost obsessive control over language to serve his theological message.
That's fascinating. So diving into the narrative itself, the poem starts, as we mentioned in medias res, we're immediately thrown into hell. Can you paint a picture of Satan's state and surroundings right then?
Absolutely. We find Satan and his defeated angels in Pandemonium, that's the capital of hell, reeling after their failed rebellion against God. They're trying to make sense of their cosmic defeat, battered but definitely not broken. And Satan, well, he's already plotting his next move, his ambition totally undimmed by his fall.
And from there, we follow Satan as he devises this, well, audacious plan to corrupt God's newest creation, humankind. He undertakes quite the journey, doesn't he?
Oh, he does. What's truly epic here is his perilous, almost Odysseus-like journey through the abyss, through chaos, to reach God's new material world and eventually the Garden of Eden. It's a grand adventure, sure, but with the most sinister of motives, a journey driven purely by spite and a desire for revenge.
So that's the setup for their fall. But before Adam and Eve even arrive on the scene, there's the monumental angelic war in heaven. Tell us a bit about that and then about God's creation of the world.
Right. The poem recounts this massive 3-day conflict where ultimately the Son of God single-handedly defeats the entire legion of angelic rebels and banishes them from heaven. It's an absolute blockbuster of a battle, truly redefining what an epic could be, not just in scale, but in its profound stakes. After this cosmic purge, God creates the world, culminating in Adam and Eve. He gives them total freedom and power over creation. Exactly, with one crucial command. Do not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil on penalty of death. It's a simple command, but one with, well, cosmic implications.
And their portrayal before the fall is quite striking, isn't it? Not maybe what you'd first expect.
It is. The portrayal of Adam and Eve before the fall is quite nuanced. They're presented as having a romantic and sexual relationship with distinct personalities and passions, yet entirely without sin. Then comes the temptation itself. Satan, disguised as a serpent, preying on Eve's vanity and tricking her with cunning rhetoric.
Classic serpent move.
Right. But what's really striking is Adam's response. He learns Eve has sinned and then knowingly commits the same sin, not out of deception, but out of loyalty, out of love for her. In Milton's portrayal, this actually makes Adam a greater sinner than Eve because he was fully aware that what he was doing was wrong, and he chose love for Eve over obedience to God.
That's a heavy interpretation. And the immediate tragic consequences of their disobedience are just stark. They experience lust for the first time, which leads to this unpleasant sexual encounter. Then come terrible nightmares, followed by profound guilt, shame, and just mutual recrimination. Blaming each other. It's a rapid descent from innocence. While Adam and Eve are grappling with their new fallen reality, let's turn our attention back to Satan, the architect of their downfall. What happens when he gets back to hell?
Indeed, while they suffer, Satan returns to hell, expecting this triumphant praise, right? But in a deeply ironic twist, as he finishes his speech, he and all his followers are suddenly transformed into hideous snakes as punishment. Yeah. They share the same guilt, and now the same humiliating form. It raises a fascinating question about the true nature of victory. Was it really a triumph if it led to their own degradation?
That grim outcome truly highlights the cost of rebellion. But interestingly, the poem doesn't end there in despair, does it? It actually takes a hopeful turn from that low point.
It does, thankfully. Eve, showing renewed humility, appeals to Adam for reconciliation of their actions, and together they seek forgiveness from God. And that leads to the Archangel Michael's critical role. He reveals the future to Adam in a vision, including everything that will happen to humankind, right up to the Great Flood.
That must have been rough to see.
Oh, Adam is profoundly distressed by this vision. So Michael then offers the crucial promise of mankind's potential redemption from original sin through Jesus Christ, whom Michael calls King Messiah. Adam and Eve are ultimately cast out of Eden, yes, but with the profound promise that Adam may find, quote, a paradise within thee, happier far. It's a powerful message of internal hope and resilience, not just external loss.
That's an incredible amount of detail to absorb. Let's shift gears now to the characters themselves, because here's where it gets really interesting. Perhaps the most famous is Satan. He's the first major character introduced, often portrayed as a tragic figure, famous for that bold declaration, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven.
Exactly. And this brings us right to the famous Critical debate around Satan. Romanticist critics, like William Blake, Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, they often viewed him as a heroic or sympathetic figure, drawn to his defiance, his ambition.
The ultimate rebel.
Precisely. However, devout Christians like C.S. Lewis and Charles Williams strongly argued against this interpretation. They asserted he is the origin of all evil and certainly not a hero. John Carey adds that Satan's ambivalence is actually key to the poem's success, making the character incredibly complex and allowing for these varied interpretations. C.S. Lewis also argued that Milton would have expected his contemporary readers not to see Satan as a hero, citing stock responses common in that era. He suggested that the romantic view kind of misses Milton's original intent. It's also fascinating to compare him to Prometheus, the Greek Titan, as Milton's Satan embodies a dual Christ-like and satanic nature in his defiance and suffering.
Very complex. Then we have Adam and Eve themselves, the central figures of the fall. What's compelling about their individual portrayals, and how does their dynamic contribute to the narrative?
Well, Adam is portrayed as more gregarious than Eve, yearning for her company, and he's completely infatuated with her. Raphael even warns him specifically to take heed lest passion sway thy judgment. But Adam's great love for Eve ultimately contributes to his disobedience.
And he couldn't help himself.
Seems like it. Eve, on the other hand, has a distinct personality. She's often unwilling to be submissive and, interestingly, initially found Adam less enticing than her own reflection in a lake.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Book 9 even stages this domestic drama where Eve convinces Adam to separate so they can work in different parts of the garden.
Bad idea.
Turns out, yes, it allows Satan to tempt her while she's alone, making her vulnerable.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, Milton's portrayal of the divine characters is equally unique, isn't it? How does he depict God the Father and the Son of God?
He certainly does. The Son of God, who interestingly is never explicitly named Jesus Christ in the poem because he hasn't yet taken human form.
Right, that makes sense.
Is presented as the ultimate hero. He is infinitely powerful, single-handedly defeats Satan's forces, and volunteers for humanity's salvation. This embodies Milton's subordinationist Christology, which regarded the Son as secondary to the Father.
Okay.
God the Father, in turn, is portrayed as all-powerful and all-knowing. He creates everything from part of himself, not from nothing, which establishes his ultimate authority over all creation. It's a very specific theological viewpoint Milton wanted to convey.
And the archangels also play crucial roles. We hear about Raphael and Michael. What are their functions in the larger story?
Right, Raphael is sent by God basically to strengthen Adam and Eve against Satan. He recounts this heroic tale of the war in heaven. But ironically, his story, which portrays Satan as bold and decisive, might have paradoxically failed to prepare Adam and Eve for Satan's more subtle temptations, the rhetoric and flattery.
Interesting point.
Then there's Michael, who's preeminent in military prowess. He ultimately expels Adam and Eve from Eden, but crucially, not without providing that vision of future salvation to Adam, giving them hope amidst their despair.
We've explored the narrative and characters. Now, let's consider the deeper meaning. So, what does this all mean? What would you say are some of the most profound themes Milton weaves into Paradise Lost? Let's maybe start with his views on marriage.
Milton's views on marriage are, well, surprisingly progressive for his time, actually. He presented Adam and Eve's relationship as one of mutual dependence, not a relation of domination or hierarchy.
Not just the man in charge.
Exactly. Each accepts their designated roles, seeing them as an asset in the relationship. This emphasis on mutuality and the idea of marriage as a contract separate from the church suggests some of Milton's forward-thinking views. It potentially even hints at his controversial thoughts on divorce.
That's a fascinating insight, especially given his own life. What about his controversial concept of idolatry? How does that manifest in the poem?
This raises an important point, especially for Milton's Protestant perspective. Milton strongly criticized the building of physical structures for worship. When Adam tries to atone for his sins by offering to build altars, Michael explains that Adam doesn't need physical objects to experience God's presence. Joseph Lyle noted that Milton wasn't against buildings themselves, but their tendency to act as convenient loci to which idolatry over time will inevitably adhere.
The structure becomes the focus, not God.
Precisely. In the poem, Eve's narcissism and self-obsession are also portrayed as a form of idolatry. She places her faith in herself and the tree of knowledge rather than God. Milton further makes his point by linking Pandemonium, Satan's palace, and Solomon's temple to famous real-world structures like St. Peter's Basilica, conveying his Protestant rejection of both Catholic and pagan false meaning through these architectural comparisons. He also saw the idea of a monarch ruling by divine right as idolatrous, associating it with the Stuart ideology of divine kingship.
Speaking of monarchy, let's talk about Milton's criticism of it. The impious war in heaven, where Satan rebels against God, can be interpreted as an allegory for the English Civil War. This poses a bit of a paradox, doesn't it? Milton himself applauded the execution of King Charles I, yet in his poem, he sides with God's awful monarch. How do we reconcile that?
It seems like a contradiction at first glance, yeah. But C.S. Lewis argued there's no real inconsistency there. Milton believed that God was his natural superior and absolute divine sovereign, but King Charles Stuart was not. It's about distinguishing between divine authority, which Milton revered, and earthly power, which he felt should be earned and accountable, not absolute by divine right.
That clarifies it. And this brings us to a major critical debate. The moral ambiguity, especially concerning God's character in Paradise Lost. Some interpretations are quite provocative.
Indeed. William Empson, a critic known for his strong anti-Christian views, provocatively argued that Milton's God is wicked. Yeah, or even a Stalinist tyrant. Empson even suggested that God's inmost counsel was actually the fortunate fall of man, that God secretly wanted humanity to fall so he could enact the plan of salvation.
That's a radical take.
Very. However, this interpretation has been strongly rebutted by scholars like Dennis Danielson. Danielson points out that foreknowledge is not culpability. God knew Adam and Eve would fall, sure, but he did not command or influence their decision. Instead, God grants free will, which is essential for a free act of love with the divine. C.S. Lewis also emphasized that the poem is a genuine Christian morality tale, and that the fall is simply disobedience from pride, a choice freely made, not some kind of divine manipulation.
Moving beyond its immediate content, Paradise Lost's legacy is just immense. Samuel Johnson praised Milton's peculiar power to astonish, noting his ability to display the vast, illuminate the splendid, and enforce the awful, high praise.
And what's truly fascinating here is how the poem was received by later generations, especially the Romantics. William Blake famously wrote, "The reason Milton wrote in fetters when he wrote of angels and God, and at liberty when of devils and hell, is because he was a true poet and of the devil's party without knowing it."
That's a famous quote.
It really is, and it perfectly captures the romantic fascination with Satan as a heroic figure, highlighting how they were drawn to his rebellion and grandiosity, even if, as we discussed, that likely wasn't Milton's original intent.
And it really did redefine the genre. It's truly a Christian epic, one so profound and perhaps challenging to some orthodoxies that it was even banned by the Catholic Church and placed on the Index Librorum Prohibitorum.
Yeah, that happened. And connecting this to the bigger picture, Paradise Lost has inspired a vast iconography and left an indelible artistic mark. Notable illustrators like William Blake, Gustave Doré, and Henry Fuseli created these stunning visual interpretations of the poem, really shaping how generations imagined its characters and scenes.
You can picture those Doré engravings now.
Exactly. Even Salvador Dali executed a set of color engravings in 1974 based on Paradise Lost. Milton's own blindness during composition even inspired biographical paintings by artists like Fuseli and Eugène Delacroix, showing the profound impact his life story had. It's a testament to the work's enduring power that it continues to inspire across so many artistic mediums.
What a profound journey we've taken through Paradise Lost. We've explored its rich characters, from the defiant Satan to the vulnerable Adam and Eve, delved into its complex themes of free will, marriage, and idolatry, and traced its enduring literary and theological significance.
Indeed. Milton's masterpiece continues to inspire scholars, writers, and artists to this day. It really remains a cornerstone of discourse about free will, the nature of good and evil, and, well, the human condition. It's a work that truly never ceases to offer new insights with every reading.
So a final thought for you, the listener, to ponder. Given Paradise Lost's exploration of free will and its consequences, and the differing interpretations of Satan, what does it truly mean to be heroic or fallen in a world where choices have cosmic reverberations? And maybe what kind of paradise within might you still seek today?